The red lights of Eclipse pulsed like a dying heartbeat. Kong Jae-won sat in the corner booth of the VIP floor, expensive whiskey untouched, his face carved from ice. Around him, Seoul's elite laughed too loud, grabbed too freely, lost themselves in bodies and bass. He felt nothing. He'd felt nothing for 5 years. Seo Minkyu shifted by the doorway, nervous energy radiating off him like heat. He'd arranged this. Convinced his boss that rumors were spreading, whispers that Kong Jae-won, the man who controlled half of Seoul's real estate, couldn't control his own body. Investors didn't trust broken men. Just try, Minkyu had begged. One night, Jae-won had tried. God, he'd tried. European escorts. Actresses. Even pills that cost more than most people's cars. His body remained a stranger to him, locked away since the night Sarin, his fiancée, the woman who knew every inch of him, sold his location for a business advantage. The ambush didn't kill him. The betrayal did something worse. It made him disappear from himself. The doctors called it psychogenic. Permanent, maybe. His mind protecting his body from ever trusting again. The door opened. Ruby Walker entered like she was dancing through water, smooth, deliberate, nothing rushed. She wasn't like the others. They performed hunger. She moved like she was telling a story only she knew, her body a language most men couldn't read. Jae-won watched without interest. Another woman. Another failure waiting to happen. She crossed to him, her silver dress catching the light. When she knelt beside his chair, he smelled jasmine and something else, fabric softener, oddly domestic. Her eyes met his, and there was no performance in them. Just quiet assessment. You don't want to be here, she said. It wasn't a question. He said nothing. She reached out, not seductive, almost absent-minded, and her fingers landed on his forearm. Bare skin on bare skin. A touch so casual it shouldn't have mattered. His body jolted like she'd plugged him into a socket. Heat. Pressure. A pulse of want so sharp it felt like violence. 5 years of nothing and suddenly something. Not complete, not overwhelming, but unmistakable. Real. Jae-won's breath caught. His eyes went wide with something between hope and horror. Ruby felt it too. The tension in his muscles, the way his whole body locked and released at once. Her hand stilled on his arm. Oh, she whispered. Their eyes met. In that second, they both understood. This wasn't normal. This was dangerous. She started to pull away. Wait. The word escaped him before he could stop it. Her jaw set. Something fierce moved across her face, half defiance, half curiosity. She leaned closer, her voice low enough that only he could hear. Shut up and let me touch it. Not crude. Not mocking. Certain. Her hand slid from his forearm to his chest, right over his heart. It hammered against her palm. His body answered. Incomplete, confusing, but alive. Jae-won shoved back from the table so hard his chair skidded. He stood, towering over her, his face a mask of fury that barely hid the terror underneath. Get out. Ruby rose slowly, understanding flooding her features. She'd broken something open. Or maybe fixed something. Either way, she'd become dangerous to him. He walked out without looking back. But his hands were shaking. And Ruby knew, they both knew, he'd felt something he thought was dead. Before we go any further, do me a favor, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And hey, Happy New Year to all of you. Because what comes next? It's going to flip everything you think you know about power, desire, and the one person who can completely destroy you just by existing. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Ruby was fired by sunrise. The text came at 6 a.m., clinical and final. Your services are no longer required. Severance package to follow. Madame Huang didn't even have the courage to call. Ruby sat on the edge of her narrow bed in the boarding house she shared with 3 other girls, staring at her phone. She should have felt relieved. Eclipse had never been the dream. But it had been steady money, and steady money meant her mother's treatments continued in that German clinic, the one that was actually keeping her alive. She looked at her hands, the same hands that had accidentally woken something in a man everyone said was untouchable. What the hell had she done? Ruby Walker hadn't planned on Seoul. She'd planned on New York, London, Paris, places where costume designers mattered, where fabric and imagination could build careers. She'd spent her college years sketching dancers mid-movement, understanding how silk clung differently than cotton, how a single seam could change the entire story a body told. Then her mother collapsed. Stage 4. The kind of cancer that laughed at American insurance and demanded cash up front. Seoul happened because a friend of a friend knew someone. Because the club paid better than sewing alterations. Because dreams didn't matter when your mother was dying an ocean away. At Eclipse, Ruby danced differently than the others. She treated each movement like choreography, like she was still designing, except now her body was the fabric and the men watching were the narrative. Madame Huang noticed. Said she had class. Put her on the VIP floor where the real money sat. Ruby told herself it was temporary. She told herself a lot of things. The truth was simpler and sadder. She was lonely in a city that didn't want her, doing work that made her invisible, saving a mother who didn't even know what her daughter did to keep her breathing. And last night, for 5 impossible seconds, she'd felt seen. By a man who looked at her like she was a bomb he couldn't defuse. Kang Jae-won hadn't slept. He stood in his penthouse, floor-to-ceiling windows framing Seoul's skyline, like a kingdom he'd built from spite and ambition. 43 floors up. Untouchable. Except he wasn't untouchable anymore. He kept replaying it, her hand on his arm, the way his body had responded like a traitor. 5 years. 5 years of doctors, therapists, specialists who poked and prodded and finally said the same thing: your body doesn't trust anyone. Maybe it never will again. He'd believed them. He'd built his life around that belief. The night Yoon's Sarin betrayed him, she'd done it softly. A whispered conversation he wasn't supposed to overhear. His location, his schedule, handed to his competitors in exchange for a board seat at her family's company. The ambush came 3 hours later, not bullets, but scandal. Photos, documents, lies that unraveled a deal he'd spent 2 years building. He'd confronted her in his apartment, the same apartment where she used to leave her clothes on his floor. Business, she'd said, lipstick perfect. You understand business. He understood betrayal. Understood that the woman who'd touched him with love had been calculating leverage the entire time. His body shut down that night. Completely. Like it had decided intimacy was a weakness it couldn't afford. Until a girl in a silver dress touched his arm and everything he believed shattered. Seo Minkyu was already running background checks before Ruby's severance cleared. He sat in his car outside her boarding house, scrolling through data on his tablet. Ruby Walker, 26, American, student visa expired 8 months ago. Mother in Germany, expensive clinic, terminal prognosis. No father listed. Worked at Eclipse for 14 months. Clean. Too clean. Minkyu had watched Jae-won for a decade. Protected him, enabled him, kept the empire running when his boss retreated into isolation. He'd seen the broken look in Jae-won's eyes after Sarin's betrayal, watched a vibrant man become a ghost. Last night, for the first time in 5 years, he'd seen something else: fear. Which meant hope. Which meant vulnerability. Minkyu didn't trust hope. Hope got men killed. He made 3 calls. 1 to immigration. 1 to a private investigator in Munich. 1 to someone who didn't ask questions. Ruby Walker needed to be understood. Or eliminated. The package arrived at noon. Ruby opened the envelope, a check with enough zeros to make her dizzy, and a non-disclosure agreement. Sign, cash it, disappear. Standard. Except, she looked at the number again. This wasn't severance. This was silence money. Guilt money. Ruby thought about her mother's oxygen bills. Thought about the design studio she'd dreamed of since she was 16. Thought about how easy it would be to take this money and vanish. Instead, she tore the check in half. She found nice paper, the expensive kind she used to sketch on, and wrote in careful print, "You don't owe me silence money. You owe yourself honesty." She left it at the reception desk of his building, addressed to Kang Jae-won, and walked away before security could stop her. 3 blocks away, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. The charity gala. Saturday. Come. She should have deleted it. She didn't. Daniel Brooks saw her across the gallery and forgot how to breathe. The charity event was the boring kind, art nobody understood, wine nobody tasted, rich people performing generosity. He'd come because his investment firm required it. He stayed because of the woman in the corner wearing a dress she'd clearly made herself. She moved through the crowd like water around stones, careful not to touch anyone. But her eyes, sharp, hungry, devoured the fabric displays, the textile art installations. "Excuse me," he said, approaching with his kindest smile. "Do you know anything about this piece?" She glanced at him, then at the installation, silk suspended in resin. "It's about preservation," she said quietly, trying to keep something beautiful from moving. "But silk is meant to flow. This is just a pretty cage." Daniel fell a little bit in love right there. "I'm Daniel Brooks. Ruby Walker. Would you like to get coffee sometime? Talk about art that isn't trapped." She almost said yes. Then her phone buzzed in her clutch. Another text. Same unknown number. "I saw what you did with the check. We need to talk." Ruby's face changed, something between fear and fascination. "I'm sorry," she told Daniel. "I can't." She left him standing there, confused and captivated. And across the gallery, in the shadows, Jae-won lowered his phone and watched her go. 3 weeks passed like slow torture. Ruby found work at Dong Demon Fabric Market, a sprawling maze of textiles where merchants shouted prices in 3 languages and silk spilled from bolts like water. She shared a stall with an elderly woman who asked no questions and paid in cash. Ruby spent her days cutting samples, measuring yards, and pretending her hands didn't remember the feeling of his skin. She was wrapping organza when she felt him. Not saw. Felt. The air changed. Conversations around her dimmed. She looked up, and Kong Jae-won stood 3 feet away, completely out of place in his tailored suit among the chaos of fabric and commerce. "We need to talk," he said. Ruby's scissors stopped mid-cut. "How did you find me?" "I've known where you were for 3 weeks." The admission hit her like a slap. "You've been watching me?" "Yes." No apology. No shame. Just honesty that felt somehow worse than a lie. Ruby set down the scissors carefully. "What do you want?" "You." The word came out flat, clinical. "I need you." Around them, merchants pretended not to listen while listening to everything. Ruby stepped out from behind the stall, forcing Jae-won to follow her into the narrow alley between buildings where delivery trucks unloaded and the smell of street food mixed with exhaust. "You fired me," she said. "Sent me money to disappear. Now you need me. It's medical." He looked past her, unable to meet her eyes. "What happened that night? My doctors want to understand it. Study it. You're the only woman in 5 years who," he stopped, jaw tight. "You're the only one." Ruby laughed, sharp and bitter. "So I'm what? A prescription? A treatment plan?" "Yes." The bluntness of it stole her breath. "I'll pay you," he continued. "Enough to cover your mother's treatment. The experimental therapy in Munich. The one her current doctors can't afford." Ruby's heart stopped. "How do you know about that?" "I know everything about you." Still no apology. Ruby Walker, 26, expired visa, mother terminal. "You work here for cash because legitimate employment requires documentation you don't have. You're running out of time and options." She should have been angry. She was. But underneath the anger was something darker, desperation. Because he was right. Her mother had maybe 6 months. The experimental treatment could give her years. And Ruby had no way to pay for it. "This is insane," she whispered. "I know. You're asking me to be a lab rat. To let doctors study why I turn you on when nobody else can." Jae-won flinched. Crudely put, but accurate. "And you think I'll just agree? Let you reduce me to some kind of medical curiosity?" "No." He finally met her eyes. "I think you'll agree because you love your mother, and I'm offering you the one thing you can't get anywhere else. Hope." Ruby wanted to hit him. Wanted to walk away. Wanted to preserve some shred of dignity. Instead, she thought about her mother's last video call. The way her voice had gotten weaker. The way she'd smiled and said, "I'm fine, baby," when they both knew she wasn't. "Double it," Ruby said. Jae-won blinked. "What?" "Double the offer. And I want conditions." Something flickered across his face. "Surprise, maybe." Or respect. Name them. 3 months. Fixed. After that, we're done, whatever the results. Agreed. No emotional involvement. This is business. Clinical. Of course. I control when and how contact happens. Not you. Not the doctors. Me. J1 hesitated. Control was what he did. Giving it up, even in this, cost him something. Fine. And you fund my design studio. Regardless of outcome. Equipment, space, materials. Whether your body cooperates or not, I get what I need to start over. Done. Ruby stared at him, this man who'd watched her for weeks without her knowing. This man who was offering her everything she needed while asking for the one thing that made her feel powerful and powerless at the same time. Why me? She asked quietly. Really? I don't know. The admission seemed to hurt him. I've tried to figure it out. Tried to logic my way through it. But my body doesn't respond to logic anymore. It responds to you. Ruby closed her eyes. Felt the weight of the choice settling on her shoulders. I want it in writing, she said. Contract. Lawyer. Legal. I'll have it drawn up today. She opened her eyes. Then I'll do it. The first session happened in a medical facility that looked more like a luxury hotel. Private wing, discreet entrance, doctors who signed NDAs before they signed their diplomas. Ruby stood in a room with soft lighting and uncomfortable equipment, wearing a hospital gown and regretting every decision that led her here. J1 sat on the examination table in similar attire, his face carved from stone. Around them, 3 doctors and 2 specialists took notes, positioned monitors, discussed protocol like they were preparing for surgery instead of whatever this was. Dr. Kim, the lead specialist, approached Ruby. We'll need you to initiate contact. Start with non-intimate touch, hand, arm, shoulder. We'll monitor his physiological responses. Ruby felt sick. You want me to touch him while you watch? While we observe, yes. This could be groundbreaking research for trauma-related psychogenic disorders. Groundbreaking. Like she was splitting atoms instead of touching a man who made her hands shake. She crossed to J1. His eyes met hers, and she saw it, the humiliation, carefully hidden, but there. This was killing him. Being studied like a specimen. Broken down to data points and medical terminology. Ruby placed her hand on his forearm. His body reacted immediately. Sharp intake of breath. Muscle tension. And lower, beneath the clinical gown, the unmistakable evidence of response. The doctors moved closer with their instruments. Elevated heart rate, increased blood flow, pupil dilation. J1's jaw clenched. His hands fisted on the table. Ruby watched shame flood his features, watched him shrink under the weight of being seen like this. This is remarkable, Dr. Kim murmured. The response is immediate and sustained. Get out. Everyone turned. Ruby's voice cut through the room like a blade. I said get out. All of you. Dr. Kim blinked. Ms. Walker, we need to document. I don't care. Out. Now. The contract specifies medical observation. Ruby turned to face them fully. The contract says I control when and how contact happens. Right now, I'm deciding it doesn't happen with an audience. So either you leave or this whole thing ends today. The doctors looked at J1. He said nothing. Just watched Ruby with something unreadable in his eyes. They left. The door clicked shut. Silence pressed in. Ruby returned to where J1 sat, still tense, still exposed. She reached out slowly and touched his face, her palm against his jaw. This isn't about your body, she said softly. It's about your fear. I'm not afraid. Liar. Her thumb traced his cheekbone. You're terrified. That's why it stopped working. Not because you're broken. Because you're scared to feel anything real. His hand came up, covered hers. And you're not scared? I'm terrified, she admitted. But I'm here anyway. Something shifted between them. The clinical distance evaporated. This wasn't observation. This was connection. J1 leaned forward until their foreheads touched. What are you doing to me? I don't know, Ruby whispered. But I think you're doing it to me too. Outside, Minkyu stood in the hallway on his phone, voice low. She's getting too close, he said. He's not thinking clearly. The voice on the other end was female, elegant, cold. Then perhaps it's time I returned. Before this girl ruins everything we've built. Sarin. 3 weeks. I'll be in Seoul in 3 weeks. The line went dead. Minkyu stared at his phone, loyalty and dread warring in his chest. Week 4, and the sessions moved to Jaewon's penthouse. More comfortable, Dr. Kim had suggested. Familiar environment might deepen the therapeutic effect. Ruby knew better. This wasn't about comfort. This was about Jaewon needing control of his space while surrendering control of his body. She understood. She'd spent her life designing costumes, understanding how environment shaped performance. His penthouse was beautiful and cold. Glass and steel, minimalist furniture, art that cost more than most people's houses. It looked like an architect's rendering, not a home. Nothing personal. Nothing warm. Except for one locked door. What's in there? Ruby asked on her 3rd visit. Jaewon was reviewing contracts at his dining table, because of course he worked during their scheduled sessions, pretending this was just another appointment. Nothing important. Everything locked is important. He looked up. Are you always this nosy? Are you always this secretive? Something almost like a smile touched his mouth. Yes. Ruby walked to the locked door, tested the handle. I could pick this. You pick locks. I pick pockets, locks, and difficult men who think paying me means owning me. She turned to face him. Want to tell me what you're hiding, or should I guess? Jaewon stood, crossed to her in 3 strides. Pulled a key from his pocket. Unlocked the door without breaking eye contact. See for yourself. Ruby stepped inside and forgot how to breathe. The room was a studio. Drafting tables covered in architectural drawings, building models, sketches of structures that looked like dreams made solid. But not cold corporate towers. These were museums, libraries, community centers. Buildings designed for people, not profit. You're an architect, she whispered. I was. Before. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Ruby moved through the room, fingers trailing over his work. Everything was perfect. Precise. Beautiful. And hidden away like shame. Why don't you build these? They don't make money. My company does commercial development. Luxury apartments. Office buildings. Things investors understand. These are better. These are naive. Ruby turned to face him. These are you. The real you. Jaewon looked uncomfortable. Exposed. We should do the session. But Ruby wasn't done. She grabbed sketch paper, started drawing directly on one of his architectural renderings, flowing lines, fabric patterns, showing how textiles could soften his sharp angles. What are you doing? His voice was strangled. Collaboration. You see buildings. I see how people move through them. Her pencil flew. Imagine this lobby with hanging silk installations. Light changes throughout the day. Beauty and function. You're ruining my drawing. I'm improving it. He should have been angry. Instead, he moved closer, watching her work. His hand reached out, picked up another pencil, added structural support for her fabric designs. They worked in silence, creating something neither could make alone. You see beauty in function, Ruby murmured. You see possibility in brokenness, he replied. Their eyes met. The space between them felt charged, dangerous. Ruby's phone shattered the moment. She checked it. Daniel Brooks. 3rd call this week. Jaewon saw the name. Your boyfriend. Someone who's not afraid to be seen in public with me. The barb hit home. Jaewon's joy tightened. This arrangement is a secret. I know. You've made that very clear. She answered the call, stepped out of the room. Jaewon watched her go, something dark and possessive coiling in his chest. Daniel Brooks was patient, kind, everything Ruby should want. He took her to museums where they discussed art. Sent flowers to the fabric market with notes that made her smile. Offered to fund her design studio with no strings, no contracts, just genuine belief in her talent. I don't understand why you won't let me help, he said over coffee in Insadong, the art district where tourists bought traditional crafts and locals pretended not to notice. Ruby stirred her latte, watching foam swirl. Because help always has strings, even when people promise it doesn't. Not mine. Daniel reached across the table, took her hand. I just want to see what you create when you're not worried about money. He meant it. She could see it in his eyes, no agenda, no hidden motivation. Just honest affection from a good man who wanted to make her happy. It should have been enough. Let me think about it, she said. Daniel smiled. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. Across the street, sitting in a black sedan with tinted windows, Jae-won watched them through the cafe window. Watched Daniel hold Ruby's hand. Watched her smile, soft and unguarded in a way she never smiled around him. Want me to run deeper background on him? Minkyu asked from the driver's seat. No. Jae-won's voice was rough. She deserves someone like him. But you want her anyway. It wasn't a question. Jae-won said nothing. Just watched until Ruby stood to leave. Watched Daniel kiss her cheek with careful respect. Watched her walk away with her hands in her pockets and her shoulders slightly hunched. She looked lonely even standing next to someone who cared about her. He understood that feeling too well. Minkyu worked in shadows. It was what Jae-won paid him for: information, protection, problems solved before they became threats. So when he discovered Ruby's mother's debt extended beyond medical bills into dangerous territory, he made a decision. Loan sharks in Munich. The kind who broke fingers first and asked questions later. Ruby's mother had borrowed against her own organs to pay for early treatments before the German clinic accepted her. Minkyu paid it off. 20,000 euros, anonymously transferred. Then he went to Ruby. He found her at the fabric market, waited until her shift ended. Ms. Walker. A moment. Ruby recognized him immediately. You're Minkyu. Jae-won's associate. He gestured to a nearby cafe. Please. They sat. Minkyu ordered nothing, got straight to business. I need you to understand something about my employer. Is this the part where you tell me to stay away from him? No. This is the part where I ask if you're prepared for what he is. Ruby frowned. I don't. Kong Jae-won doesn't do halfway, Minkyu interrupted. When he wants something, he consumes it. When he loves something, he destroys it trying to protect it. Yoon's Sarin learned that. His ex-fiancée. His obsession. He built an empire trying to be worthy of her. And when she betrayed him, he didn't just break. He shattered. Minkyu leaned forward. You're putting him back together. Do you really think a man like him will let you walk away when the contract ends? Ruby's mouth went dry. This is temporary. 3 months. We both agreed. You agreed. He's enduring. There's a difference. Minkyu stood. I've protected him for 10 years. From business rivals, from himself, from women who wanted to use him. But you? I can't protect him from you. Because he doesn't want me to. He left her sitting there, coffee cold, mind racing. That night, Minkyu made another call he didn't tell Jae-won about. The debts are cleared. She's free. Good. Sarin's voice purred through the phone. Now she owes someone. Obligation is easier to manipulate than love. Week 6 brought the almost kiss. Ruby arrived at the penthouse to find Jae-won in his studio, staring at his drawings like they held answers to questions he couldn't ask. Bad day? She asked. Bad year. She crossed to him, no hesitation now. 6 weeks had built familiarity. She knew how he took his coffee, knew he worked when he was anxious, knew the exact spot on his neck where tension gathered. Show me what you're working on. He did. A library. Community-focused, beautiful, impossible. Why impossible? She asked. Investors want returns, not returns to literacy. Ruby studied the drawings, then grabbed her sketchbook. Started adding textile elements, reading nooks with curtain privacy, children's areas with fabric walls that could be rearranged. They worked side by side. Hours passed. At some point, food appeared, Minkyu, always watching, always providing. Near midnight, Ruby's pencil stilled. Why did she betray you? Jae-won's hand stopped moving. Sarin. You don't have to. Power. Simple. Brutal. She wanted it more than she wanted me. I was just a stepping stone to her family's approval. That's not betrayal. That's cruelty. Is there a difference? Ruby turned to face him. They were close, had been for hours without noticing. Yes. Betrayal is breaking a promise. Cruelty is never meaning it in the first place. His eyes searched hers. Which one are you? Neither. I'm keeping my promise. 3 months. No emotional involvement. Liar. The word hung between them. Jaewon's hand came up, traced her jaw. You're a terrible liar, Ruby Walker. She should have pulled away. Should have reminded him of the contract, the boundaries, the professional distance they'd agreed to maintain. Instead, she leaned into his touch. So are you. He moved closer. She tilted her face up. Their lips were inches apart, breath mingling, hearts hammering. Jaewon's phone exploded with sound. They jerked apart. He answered, voice rough. What? Minkyu's voice, urgent through the speaker. Emergency. Board meeting. Now. It's midnight. Now. Jaewon closed his eyes, jaw clenched. When he looked at Ruby again, the moment was broken. I have to. I know. Go. He left. Ruby stood in his studio, touching her lips where his almost were, wondering if emergency board meetings were always so perfectly timed. In his car, Minkyu avoided Jaewon's eyes. There was no emergency. Just a man protecting his employer from a mistake he'd regret. At least, that's what Minkyu told himself. The dinner with Daniel happened week 7. Ruby accepted because she needed perspective. Needed to remember there were good men who didn't require contracts and clinical detachment. They went to a rooftop restaurant. Daniel was charming, attentive, everything right. Halfway through appetizers, Kang Jae-won walked in. Ruby's fork stopped midair. What are you? This is a public restaurant, Jae-won said coldly. I'm allowed to eat. Daniel stood, extending his hand. Daniel Brooks. And you are leaving. Jae-won didn't shake his hand. But he didn't leave either. Just stood there, radiating possession and fury. Ruby stood too. This is inappropriate. Is it? I wasn't aware our contract included exclusivity clauses about social engagements. Daniel looked between them, understanding dawning. You're him. The man she won't talk about. I don't know what she's told you. Nothing. She tells me nothing about you. Which tells me everything. Daniel turned to Ruby. Is this why you won't let me help? Because of him. Daniel. I want to marry you, Daniel said. Simple. Honest. Devastating. Ruby's world tilted. What? I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other 2 months. But I've never been more certain of anything. He took her hands. Say yes. Come away with me. Build your studio in New York. Let me give you the life you deserve. Jaewon's face could have been carved from ice. Ruby. One word. A warning. A plea. A command. She looked at Daniel, safety, kindness, a future without complications. She looked at Jaewon, danger, passion, something that felt like falling. I need air, she whispered, and fled. Both men watched her go. She'll choose you, Jaewon said finally. You're the right choice. But not the choice she wants. Daniel sat back down. What did you do to her? Everything I shouldn't have. Jaewon left. Didn't go after Ruby. Went home and poured expensive whiskey and didn't drink it. An hour later, his door opened. Ruby stood there, still in her dinner dress, breathing hard like she'd run the whole way. No words. She crossed to him, took his hand, placed it over her heart. It thundered beneath his palm. His body responded. Fully. Completely. For the first time in 5 years, everything worked exactly as it should. Ruby's eyes widened. She felt it too, the difference, the completion. I didn't choose, she whispered. I just came home. Jaewon pulled her against him, buried his face in her hair, and finally let himself believe. Maybe broken things could heal. Maybe he could have this. Maybe. His phone lit up on the counter. Message from unknown number. I'm back in Seoul. We need to talk about your little project. Sarin. Everything was about to fall apart. The gala was supposed to be Ruby's triumph. She'd spent 8 weeks designing a capsule collection, structured pieces with flowing elements, professional wear that moved like dance costumes. Jaewon had secured her a showcase spot at his company's annual investor event. Not charity. Not pity. Legitimate opportunity. Ruby stood beside her display, watching Seoul's elite examine her work with calculating eyes. Buyers circled. Fashion editors took notes. This was real. This was happening. Then Yoon Sarin walked in. Ruby didn't know who she was at first. Just another beautiful woman in an expensive dress. But the room shifted when she entered, conversations paused, heads turned, and Jae-won went absolutely still beside Ruby. "Who is that?" Ruby whispered. Jae-won's voice came out strangled. "My past." Sarin glided through the crowd on the arm of a silver-haired man Ruby recognized from business articles, Park Jin-woo, Jae-won's biggest competitor. She was elegant in the way weapons are elegant. Precise. Deadly. Beautiful. Her eyes found Jae-won across the room. Then found Ruby standing beside him. Something flickered across her perfect features. Recognition. Assessment. Decision. She changed course, heading straight for them. "Jae-won." Her voice was silk. "It's been too long." Not long enough. His hand found the small of Ruby's back, possessive, protective. Sarin's gaze dropped to that hand, then slid to Ruby. "And who is this?" "Ruby Walker. Designer." Ruby extended her hand, refusing to be intimidated. Sarin's handshake was cold. "The American. I've heard so much about you." The words felt like a threat. Park Jin-woo cleared his throat. "Congratulations on your collection, Ms. Walker. Very interesting approach to corporate wear." "Thank you." Sarin is quite the fashion enthusiast herself, Jin-woo continued. "Perhaps you two should chat. Jae-won and I have business to discuss anyway." It wasn't a suggestion. Jae-won's hand tightened on Ruby's back. "I'll stay." "It's fine," Ruby said, though it wasn't. "Go. I can handle fashion talk." She couldn't. Because Sarin wasn't interested in fashion. The moment the men stepped away, Sarin's smile sharpened. "Walk with me." They moved through the gallery, Sarin examining Ruby's designs with expert eyes. "You're talented. I'll give you that. The construction is excellent." "Thank you." "How long have you been sleeping with him?" Ruby nearly tripped. "Excuse me." Jae-won. "How long?" "That's none of your." "8 weeks? 10? Long enough to think you matter." Sarin stopped in front of a dress with structured shoulders and silk draping. "This one is beautiful. Armor disguised as softness. Is that how you see yourself?" Ruby's jaw clenched. "What do you want?" "To warn you." Woman to woman. Sarin turned, and her eyes were colder than her voice. "He's broken. You know that, right? Psychogenic erectile dysfunction. 5 years of failure. Every doctor, every treatment, nothing worked." "How do you?" "Because I broke him. No shame. Just fact. And now you're trying to fix him. How's that working out? Does he function yet, or do you still have to work for it?" Ruby felt sick. "You have no right." "I have every right. I was going to marry him. I knew his body better than he did. And then I made one mistake, one business decision, and he shut down completely." Sarin stepped closer. "But you figured out the trick, didn't you? You're special. The only one who can touch him. Must feel powerful." "This conversation is over." Ruby tried to walk away. Sarin's next words stopped her cold. "Imagine the headlines. Billionaire pays stripper to fix sexual dysfunction. Your face, your name, your mother's illness, all of it public. Is that what you want?" Ruby turned slowly. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm offering clarity. Women like you always have an angle. What's yours? Money? Marriage? A green card? I love him." The words escaped before Ruby could stop them. "True and terrible and exposing." Sarin laughed. "Oh, sweetheart. He doesn't believe in love anymore." "I made sure of that." Across the gallery, Jae-won and Jin-woo stood in a corner, voices low and tense. "She's using you," Jin-woo said. "Everyone knows." "The girl from Eclipse?" "Come on, Jae-won. You're smarter than this." "My personal life affects business. Investors are whispering. They think you're compromised." "Weak." Jae-won's phone buzzed. Message from Sarin, terrace. 5 minutes. Alone. He shouldn't have gone. He went. The terrace was empty, Seoul's lights spread below like fallen stars. Sarin stood at the railing, backlit and beautiful. "Thank you for coming." "What do you want, Sarin?" "To apologize." She turned. 5 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I chose ambition over you. I've regretted it every single day since. You betrayed me. I was young and stupid and scared. My family was drowning financially. That board seat wasn't just opportunity, it was survival. Tears gathered in her eyes. I never meant to hurt you. Never meant for it to break you. It didn't break me, didn't it? 5 years, J1. 5 years of dysfunction. Don't tell me that wasn't my fault. He said nothing. But now you're healing. Because of her. Sarin's voice hardened. Do you really think that's coincidence? That some stripper just happened to be exactly what you needed? Don't call her that. What should I call her? Your therapist? Your prostitute with a contract. J1 moved fast, grabbed Sarin's arm. Watch your mouth. Or what? You'll defend her honor? She's using you, just like I did. The difference is, I actually loved you. Sarin pulled free. That's why I'm ending it. Before it goes further. Inside the gallery, Ruby stood frozen. She'd come looking for J1. Found him on the terrace. Heard voices through the glass doors. She's using you. Women like her always do. Sarin's voice, clear and cutting. Then J1's response. That's why I'm ending it. Before it goes further. Ruby's heart stopped. She didn't hear the rest. Didn't hear him say, I'm ending the contract, not my feelings. She just heard ending it. And understood, she was a transaction. Always had been. She walked away before they could see her. Before the tears could fall. Before she could shatter completely in front of Seoul's elite. Ruby went to his penthouse because she had nowhere else to break. J1 found her in his bedroom an hour later, still in her gala dress, mascara streaked, eyes hollow. Ruby, if I'm using you, she interrupted, voice raw, let me finish the job. What are you? She crossed to him, fingers finding his belt. Isn't that what you pay me for? To fix what's broken. Stop. He caught her hands. What happened? I heard you. With her. On the terrace. Understanding flooded his face. Ruby, I wasn't. Don't lie. Not now. She pulled free, started undoing his shirt buttons. You want to end it? Fine. But I'm owed 3 months. Let's make the last session count. What started as anger shifted mid-touch. Her hands on his chest. His breath catching. The familiar heat rising between them, except this time it wasn't clinical. It was desperate. Ruby. Her name broke on his lips. Shut up. She kissed him, hard, hurting, honest. He kissed back. They fell into his bed like drowning people grabbing wreckage. Clothes shed between gasps and accusations. Her, you're a coward. Him, you're impossible. Both of them, I can't and please, and finally, silence except for breathing. When he entered her, his body worked perfectly. No hesitation. No failure. Just completion. Afterward, darkness pressed in. Ruby lay against his chest, feeling his heartbeat slow, wondering when touching him had become necessary as breathing. Why did it have to be me? She whispered. His arms tightened. Because you never pretended. She almost believed him. Morning came too bright and too cruel. Ruby woke to voices in the living room. Mail. Urgent. She pulled on J1's shirt, padded to the doorway. Minkyu stood there with documents spread across the dining table. J1, half-dressed, stared at papers like they contained his execution orders. What is this? J1's voice was ice. Her mother's deaths. All of them. Medical, personal, the loan sharks in Munich. Minkyu pointed at dates. Paid anonymously 3 weeks before she agreed to your contract. Ruby's blood went cold. Who paid them? J1 asked. I assumed you did. I didn't. Both men turned as Ruby stepped into the room. You paid my mother's debts, she said slowly. Before the contract. Before I agreed to help you. You were manipulating me from the start. No. J1 crossed to her. Ruby, I swear I didn't. Then who did? The answer came from Minkyu, voice hollow. Sarin. I checked the account trail this morning. All payments originate from shell companies she controls. The room tilted. Why would she? Ruby couldn't finish. J1's face had gone gray. When did the payment start? Minkyu checked his tablet. 2 years ago. Right after Ruby arrived in Seoul. The pieces fell together like shards of broken glass. She positioned me, Ruby whispered. The club. The room assignment. Everything. Madame Huang's club is in a building Sarin's family owns, Minkyu confirmed. The night you met Jae-won, I checked the logs. You were specifically requested for his room. Why? Ruby's voice cracked. Why go through all this? Jae-won understood first. His face hardened. To destroy me. Plant someone I'd want but could never trust. Watch me fall for a setup. Then expose everything. But I didn't know, Ruby said desperately. I swear I didn't. I know. Do you? She laughed, bitter. Because from here, it looks like I'm exactly what Sarin said. A prostitute with a sob story. A weapon aimed at your heart. You're not. How do you know? How do I know? Ruby backed toward the bedroom. Maybe Sarin picked me because I'm exactly the kind of girl who'd fall for this. Desperate enough. Lonely enough. Stupid enough. Ruby, what we felt, what I thought we felt, was it even real? Or was I just following a script someone else wrote? She grabbed her clothes. Jae-won didn't stop her. Because he didn't know the answer either. Ruby left his penthouse with the sunrise. She didn't look back. Ruby returned to Eclipse at noon, when the club was empty except for cleaning staff and ghosts. Madame Huang stood behind the bar, polishing glasses that didn't need polishing. She looked up when Ruby entered, and guilt flashed across her features. I wondered when you'd come. Ruby sat at the bar. Tell me the truth. Madame Huang set down the glass. Sighed. Sarin approached me 2 years ago. Offered to clear the club's debt if I'd do her a favor. Position a specific girl in a specific room when a specific man finally came downstairs. Me. Jae-won. Yes. Why me? She showed me your file. Said you were perfect, beautiful, talented, desperate. The kind of woman men save, not suspect. Madame Huang poured herself a drink. I needed the money. The club was 3 months from closing. So I agreed. Ruby's hands fisted on the bar. Did you know what she was planning? To ruin him? Yes. She wanted him broken twice over, once by betrayal, again by hope. Madame Huang drank. But she didn't count on you being real. Real? The way you touched him that first night, that wasn't performance. I've seen women fake connection for 15 years. You weren't faking. Ruby's eyes burned. How do I know? How do I know any of what I felt wasn't just programming? She controlled everything. My mother's bills, my job, the room, the moment we met. Maybe she controlled my feelings too. Did she control the way you cried in the dressing room after you were fired? Madame Huang asked quietly. Did she control the note you left him, or the way you refused his money? Did she control last night when you looked at him like he was oxygen? Ruby said nothing. Sarin is brilliant, but she's not God. She set the stage. What happened on it? That was you and him. Madame Huang refilled her glass. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I thought I was saving my club. I didn't think about who I was sacrificing. Your club for my life. Great trade. I know. Ruby stood. If she comes back, tell her she won. I'm done. Jae-won's body betrayed him again. He returned to Dr. Kim's office 3 days after Ruby left, desperate for answers that weren't about her. The examination was humiliating. No response. Not even a flicker. I don't understand, Dr. Kim said, frowning at monitors. The progress was remarkable. And now? Now nothing. Have you had any contact with Ms. Walker? No. Mr. Kong, the psychological component here is significant. Your body responded to her specifically because she represented safety, trust. She represented a lie. Jae-won's voice was hollow. Everything about us was manufactured. My body finally figured that out. Dr. Kim looked skeptical. Or your body is responding to emotional trauma. You've lost her. That's a significant stressor. I never had her. That's the point. But alone in his penthouse that night, staring at her sketches still scattered across his studio floor, Jae-won understood the truth. He wasn't broken because of dysfunction. He was broken because he'd finally let himself want something real, and it turned out to be a beautiful trap. His phone buzzed. Minkyu, Sarin's making her move. Brace yourself. The article hit every major outlet simultaneously. Billionaire's sordid healing arrangement with exotic dancer. Ruby's face. Her name. Eclipse's address. Medical records that should have been sealed. Text messages between Ruby and Jaewon, taken out of context to look transactional and cold. I need you. Medical. Nothing more. Double the offer. If I'm using you, let me finish the job. Ruby's phone exploded with calls. Reporters outside her boarding house. Fashion editors who'd promised meetings now wouldn't return emails. The gallery that was going to showcase her collection sent a terse cancellation. Worse was the call from Germany. Her mother's voice, weak and confused. Ruby? Baby? What are these people saying about you? It's complicated, Mom. They're saying terrible things. That you sold yourself. I'm okay. I promise. Don't worry about me. How can I not worry? You're my daughter. Ruby hung up and cried for the first time since leaving Jaewon's penthouse. Daniel Brooks appeared at her door that evening with flowers and devastation. I saw the news, he said. Ruby let him in because she was too tired to argue. Come to gloat. To help. If you'll let me. He set the flowers down. My family's lawyers can fight this. Sue for defamation, invasion of privacy. It's all true, Daniel. The contract, the arrangement. All of it. I don't care. She looked at him. You should. Did you love him? Direct. Honest. Ruby wanted to lie. Couldn't. I don't know what was real. Daniel crossed to her, took her hands. Then let me be real. Come away with me. Leave Seoul, leave all of this. Start over in New York. I'll fund your studio, no strings. Just, let me love you enough for both of us. Daniel. Marry me. The words hung between them. You don't mean that. I've never been more serious. He pulled out a ring box. Simple. Elegant. Nothing like the chaos of the past months. I know you don't love me yet. But you could. Given time. Given space from him. Ruby stared at the ring. At Daniel's kind face. At the door back to safety. Yes, she whispered. Not from love. From exhaustion. From the desperate need to believe someone could want her without an agenda. Daniel kissed her forehead. We'll figure out the details. But first, let's get you out of Seoul. Minkyu delivered the news to Jaewon in his office. Ruby Walker and Daniel Brooks are engaged. They're leaving for New York tomorrow. Jaewon stared at the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. Good. Good. That's all you. She deserves someone who won't destroy her. Jaewon's voice was flat. Someone safe. You love her. That's why I'm letting her go. Minkyu studied his employer. 10 years of loyalty, and he'd never seen Jaewon like this, hollowed out, surrendered. You're just giving up? I'm letting her choose. There's a difference. Is there? Jaewon didn't answer. That night, alone in his penthouse, his body locked down completely. Panic attacks he hadn't experienced in years returned with crushing force. His empire, built on certainty and control, began to crumble as he withdrew from meetings, ignored calls, stopped showing up. Sarin had won. And Jaewon couldn't even care. The wedding dress fitting happened in a boutique that smelled like hope and lies. Ruby stood on a platform, surrounded by mirrors, wearing white silk that cost more than a month's rent. Daniel sat nearby, smiling encouragement. The seamstress circled with pins and praise. You look beautiful, Daniel said. Ruby stared at her reflection. The dress was perfect. The man was perfect. The future stretched ahead, safe and suffocating. Are you happy? The seamstress asked, adjusting a hem. Ruby opened her mouth to say yes. The word wouldn't come. Because the woman in the mirror wasn't happy. She was buried alive in white silk, pretending survival was the same as living. I need air, Ruby said. She stepped off the platform, walked out in the wedding dress, kept walking until she reached a park where children played and couples held hands and nobody knew who she was or what she'd done. She sat on a bench, still in the wedding dress, and finally let herself admit the truth. She loved Jaewon. Even if it started as manipulation. Even if Sarin orchestrated their meeting. Even if the whole thing was a beautiful trap. What she felt was real. And she was about to marry the wrong man because she was too scared to fight for the right one. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. The penthouse. Midnight. Come alone or don't come at all. There are things you need to know. Madam Huang. Ruby stared at the message. Behind her, Daniel's voice. Ruby? You okay? She turned. looked at him in his perfect suit with his perfect concern. "No," she said honestly. "I'm not." The wedding was in 2 days. Everything was about to change. Ruby arrived at the penthouse at midnight wearing her wedding dress. She hadn't changed. Hadn't thought to. Just got in a cab and gave the address, trailing white silk like a ghost bride haunting her own future. Madame Huang waited in the lobby, looking smaller than Ruby remembered. Older. Scared. "You came. You said there were things I needed to know." Madame Huang handed her a folder. "Everything. Sarin's payments, her instructions to me, correspondence with doctors. All of it." Ruby opened the folder. Bank statements. Emails. Medical records with annotations in Sarin's handwriting. "She didn't just manipulate you," Madame Huang said quietly. "She manipulated him too. The diagnosis, the prognosis, she made him think his brokenness was permanent when it never was." Ruby's hands shook. "What are you talking about?" 5 years ago, after the betrayal, Sarin paid Jaewon's doctors. Not to treat him. To convince him he couldn't be treated. She wanted him dependent on the idea he was unfixable. Easier to control a man who thinks he's beyond repair. The pages blurred. Ruby saw dates, amounts, names of physicians who declared Jaewon's condition permanent. "Dr. Kim." Ruby whispered. "Clean. He came later. But the original doctors? All on Sarin's payroll." Madame Huang's voice cracked. "She engineered his prison. Then she positioned you as the only key. Planned to expose everything once you got close enough. Destroy you both in one move. Why are you telling me this now?" "Because she's taking my club tomorrow. The building, the business, everything. Payment for my betrayal." Madame Huang smiled sadly. "Some things are worth losing everything for. Like the truth." Ruby stared at the woman who'd sold her into this mess, now sacrificing everything to pull her out. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't let her win." Ruby went to Dr. Kim's office at dawn, still in the wedding dress, folder clutched like a weapon. He arrived at 7, startled to find her in his waiting room. "Ms. Walker, tell me the truth." She thrust the documents at him. About Jaewon's original diagnosis. Dr. Kim read, and his face went gray. "Where did you get these? Does it matter? Is it true? Was he misdiagnosed?" The doctor sat heavily. "I suspected. When I took over his case, the prognosis seemed off. Psychogenic dysfunction is real, but permanent cases are rare. Usually there's progression, even minimal. But his original records showed no hope at all. Because Sarin paid them to say that." "I can't confirm." "You just did." Ruby leaned forward. "Could he have healed? With time? With the right person?" Dr. Kim met her eyes. His trauma was real. The ambush, the betrayal, that legitimately affected him. But the permanence was a lie. With proper therapy, with trust, with someone who made him feel safe. He paused. Yes, he could have healed naturally. Ruby's vision swam. She kept him broken on purpose. It appears so. And me? What we did, was it real treatment or just love? Dr. Kim said simply. You gave him what medicine couldn't. Permission to trust again. Ruby returned to Daniel's apartment as the sun rose, still wearing the dress. He took one look at her face and knew. You're leaving, he said. I'm sorry. Daniel crossed to her, no anger in his expression. Just sad understanding. You need to go to him. I'm supposed to marry you in 3 days. You're supposed to be happy. He touched her cheek. Go. Daniel. I knew. The moment you said yes, I knew you were running toward safety, not toward me. I just hoped. He smiled. I hoped maybe safety would be enough eventually. Tears spilled down Ruby's cheeks. You deserve someone who chooses you first. So does he. And that's you. Daniel kissed her forehead. Love him better than I could. That's all I ask. Ruby hugged him hard. Thank you. For what? For being good when I needed to remember good men exist. He watched her leave in a wedding dress that would never be worn, loving her enough to let her go. Minkyu found Jaewon on the penthouse floor, surrounded by architectural drawings he'd ripped to pieces. You look like hell. Jaewon didn't look up. Get out. I need to tell you something first. Unless it's that Sarin is dead, I don't care. Minkyu sat on the floor beside him. I knew. About the manipulation. About Ruby being positioned. I discovered it weeks ago. Jaewon's head snapped up. What? I ran backgrounds on everyone after that first night. Found Sarin's payments, the setup, everything. And I said nothing. Jaewon stood, fury radiating. You knew she was a plant and you didn't tell me? I thought I was protecting you. I thought keeping you safe meant keeping you alone. Minkyu rose too, facing his employer's rage. I was wrong. I chose your isolation over your happiness because I was scared. Scared that if you opened up again, you'd get destroyed again. So you let me fall for a lie. No, I let you fall for the truth. Everything Sarin planned was manipulation. But what happened between you and Ruby? That was real. I saw it. That's why I stayed silent. Because for the first time in 5 years, you were alive. Jaewon's fist connected with Minkyu's jaw. Minkyu took it. Didn't fight back. You're fired. He turned to leave. Minkyu. He stopped. You're rehired. But next time, trust me with the truth. Even if it hurts. Minkyu nodded, jaw already swelling. There's something else. Sarin knows Ruby's coming back to you. She's making a final move. What move? Ruby's mother. Illegal work visa. Sarin's threatening deportation, criminal charges. She's giving Ruby a choice, you or her mother's freedom. Jaewon's blood went cold. When? Now. She sent Ruby a message an hour ago. Ruby stood outside Jaewon's building, phone in hand, staring at Sarin's text. Your mother's visa status is interesting. One call to immigration, and she's deported. Maybe prosecuted. Unless you leave Seoul today and never contact Jaewon again. Your choice. Behind the threat was evidence, documents proving her mother had worked illegally when she first arrived in Germany, desperate for money before the clinic accepted her. Ruby could go to Jaewon. Fight Sarin together. Risk everything. Or she could protect her mother. Walk away. Let Sarin win. She thought about Madame Huang losing her club for the truth. She thought about Daniel releasing her without bitterness. She thought about Jaewon, broken and beautiful, learning to trust again. Ruby deleted Sarin's message and walked into the building. Jaewon opened his door to find her standing there in a wedding dress, mascara streaked, clutching a folder like a lifeline. I got your message, he said carefully. About your mother. I don't care. He blinked. Ruby, if Sarin. I don't care, she repeated. About the threats, about my mother's visa, about any of it. I care about this. She held up the folder. Do you know what's in here? No. Proof. That Sarin paid your doctors to lie. That your condition was never permanent. That she kept you broken on purpose so you'd always need her. Ruby stepped closer. Everything was manipulated. The club, the meeting, my mother's bills. All of it was Sarin's plan. I know. But what happened between us, what we felt, she couldn't script that. She tried. God, she tried. But real love doesn't follow anyone's plan. Jaewon's throat worked. Ruby, I choose you, she said simply. Even if it costs everything. Even if my mother gets deported. Even if Sarin destroys me. I choose you. Because you're the only choice that feels like living instead of surviving. He crossed to her in 3 steps, framed her face with shaking hands. Your mother's visa was legalized this morning. I had lawyers working on it for days. Sarin has no leverage. Ruby's eyes widened. You. I wasn't letting her hold that over you. Over us. He pressed his forehead to hers. But you came anyway. Even thinking it would cost you everything. Of course I did. I love you, you impossible man. I love you too. I think I have since that first night when you told me to shut up and let you touch me. Ruby laughed through tears. We're a disaster. We're real. He kissed her, and it felt like coming home after years of being lost. Now what? She whispered against his lips. Now I destroy the woman who tried to destroy us both. How? Jaewon smiled, sharp and dangerous. Board meeting. Tomorrow. And you're coming with me. The boardroom was full of Seoul's most powerful investors when Jaewon walked in with Ruby on his arm. Whispers rippled through the room. Everyone had read the articles. Everyone knew the scandal. Ruby Walker, the stripper-turned-designer who'd supposedly seduced their chairman for money. Sarin sat at the far end of the table, immaculate in white, her new fiancé Park Jin-woo beside her. She smiled when she saw them. Jae-won. How unexpected. I thought you'd resigned. I'm here to clear the air before I do. He moved to the head of the table, Ruby beside him. For weeks, you've all been reading stories about me. My condition. My arrangement with Ms. Walker. Time you heard the truth. Jin-woo leaned back. We're not interested in your personal. You will be. Jae-won nodded to Min-kyu, who distributed folders to every board member. 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with psychogenic erectile dysfunction following a professional and personal betrayal. What you're reading now is evidence that diagnosis was purchased. Sarin's smile faltered. The physicians who declared my condition permanent were paid by Yoon Sarin to deliver a false prognosis. She wanted me dependent on the belief I was unfixable. Easier to control. Jae-won's voice was steady, clinical. The ambush that triggered my condition? Also orchestrated by her. Not for business leverage, as she claimed. Personal revenge. That's absurd, Sarin said, but her voice lacked conviction. Page 6. Bank transfers from your shell companies to Dr. Lee's offshore account. Page 9. Emails between you and the security team detailing my schedule the night of the ambush. Jae-won looked directly at her. Want to keep lying, or should I continue? The room was silent. Sarin stood slowly, composure cracking. You chose business over me. You were going to end our engagement for a deal in Singapore. What was I supposed to do? End it yourself. Move on. Not destroy me for not loving you enough. I did it because I loved you. Her voice rose. You were everything, and you treated me like an asset. So yes, I arranged the ambush. Yes, I paid doctors to keep you broken. Because if I couldn't have you whole, I'd make sure you needed me broken. Gasps around the table. Jin-woo stood. Sarin. Shut up. She turned to Ruby. And you? You think you won? You're nothing but a prostitute with good timing. Ruby remained calm. I'm the woman he chose when he could finally choose. You made him a prisoner. I set him free. Sarin lunged across the table, not physically, just her final weapon. Your mother's visa. Already legalized, Jae-won interrupted. This morning. You have no power here. Sarin's face twisted. She turned to the board. You're going to believe him? He paid a stripper for sex therapy, and now he's making up lies about me to save face. We believe the bank records, one investor said quietly. And the emails. And Dr. Lee's deposition, which Min-kyu obtained this morning. Sarin's world crumbled in real time. I'm done hiding, Jae-won said to the room. Yes, I had a condition. Yes, I hired Ruby under contract to help me. And yes, I fell in love with her despite every reason not to. But I used my power to avoid vulnerability for 5 years, and I'm finished. He pulled papers from his jacket. My resignation as chairman, effective immediately. I'm restructuring my holdings, liquidating assets, stepping away from the empire I built to hide behind. Jae-won, you don't have to, another board member started. I do. Because I choose the woman who saw me when I was nothing over the power I used to pretend I was something. He looked at Ruby. Some things are worth losing everything for. Sarin laughed bitterly. You'll regret this. Choosing poverty with her over power with me. I regret every day I believed your lies, Jae-won replied. But this? Choosing her? I'll never regret this. Sarin grabbed her bag, pushed past Jin-woo, who looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. She stopped at the door. You were supposed to need me, she whispered. I was supposed to be free, Jae-won answered. Thank you for finally letting me go. She left, and the room exhaled. 3 weeks later, in a modest apartment that was nothing like his penthouse, Jae-won watched Ruby sketch at their tiny kitchen table. You know you didn't have to give up everything, she said without looking up. I gave up nothing that mattered. You're living in a 2-bedroom apartment. You take the subway. I'm living with you. That's all that matters. Ruby set down her pencil, crossed to where he sat on their second-hand couch. How's the new firm? Small. 3 employees. Projects that actually help people instead of just making money. He pulled her onto his lap. I'm designing a community library in Itaewon. You'd love it. Show me. He did, pulling out sketches. Ruby grabbed her pencil, started adding textile elements like she'd done that first night in his studio. "We're good at this," she murmured. "We're good at a lot of things." She smiled. "Are we? Want me to prove it?" "Always." He carried her to their bedroom, small, simple, theirs. Laid her on sheets they'd picked out together at a department store, not custom-made by designers. When he touched her, his body responded perfectly. Not because it was fixed. Because it was free. "You were never broken," Ruby whispered against his skin. "I was never whole until you," he answered, and showed her exactly what healing looked like. Later, tangled together in the dark, Ruby's phone buzzed with a message from her mother. "The doctors say I'm in remission. Coming to visit next month. Can't wait to meet him." Ruby showed Jaewon. He kissed her temple. "Think she'll approve? Of the man who gave up an empire for me? She'll love you. I didn't give it up for you. I gave it up for us. There's a difference." "What difference?" "This way, we built something new together. Something that's ours, not mine or yours. Ours." Ruby turned in his arms. "I love you." "I know. You came to me in a wedding dress meant for another man. Kind of gave it away." She laughed. "Best decision I ever made." "Second best," he corrected. "What was first?" "That night at Eclipse. When you told me to shut up and let you touch me. I didn't know what I was starting." "Neither did I." Jaewon held her closer. "But I'd start it again. Every time. In every life." Outside, Seoul glowed with a million lights. Inside their small apartment, two people who'd been broken by manipulation discovered something manipulation could never touch. Real love. Hard-won. Honest. Whole. And absolutely worth everything they'd lost to find it. The morning sun didn't hit a gold-plated floor anymore. Instead, it filtered through cheap linen curtains, dancing over a wooden kitchen table cluttered with fabric swatches and architectural blueprints. Jaewon sat there, a simple mug of coffee in his hand, looking over a lease agreement for Ruby's new studio. There was no tie around his neck, no cold steel in his eyes. He looked younger. He looked like a man who finally slept through the night. Ruby walked up behind him, her fingers stained with charcoal from a morning spent sketching. She rested her hand on his shoulder, her thumb tracing the line of his collarbone. "Still working," she whispered. Jaewon covered her hand with his, squeezing gently. He leaned his head back against her. "Just making sure they aren't overcharging my favorite designer." He pulled her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "Still works, by the way." Ruby smiled, leaning down to press her cheek against his. "You work, Jaewon. This life, this is just the proof." A month later, Ruby stood in the center of her small studio in Itaewon. It wasn't the grand stage of a corporate gala, but the air felt electric. Her first major collection, Scars and Silk, hung on the racks. The pieces were unconventional. She had used rougher, textured raw silks, fabrics that looked weathered but felt incredibly soft to the touch. Each garment told a story of something that had been torn and then mended into something stronger. In the front row sat her mother, looking healthy and vibrant after her return from Germany. Beside her was Minkyu, sporting a faint scar on his jaw, but wearing a proud, genuine smile. But Ruby only had eyes for the man standing in the back. Jaewon didn't own the building, but he owned the moment. When their eyes met, there was no shame, no secret contract, and no walls. Just the quiet, steady beat of a heart that had been brought back to life. The walk home. That evening, they walked through the streets of Seoul. They were just two people among millions, anonymous, unburdened, and free. No bodyguards followed them. No paparazzi cared where they ate dinner. "Do you ever miss it?" Ruby asked, swinging their joined hands between them. "The empire? The power of having everyone in the city bow to you." Jaewon stopped. He pulled her into the shadow of a blooming cherry blossom tree, the pink petals falling like snow around them. He tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering on her skin. "I spent 5 years at the top of a mountain, and I was freezing the entire time," he said softly. "I don't miss the power, Ruby. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not just surviving. I'm home." He kissed her then, a slow, deep kiss that tasted like the future they were building together. Sometimes, The most powerful thing you can do is let someone touch the parts of you that the world convinced you were dead. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is be the one who reaches out anyway. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a journey of healing and love. Drop a comment below. Have you ever felt like a part of you was broken beyond repair, only to find the one person who could see the beauty in the cracks? Share your story with us. We'd love to hear from you.